Hey guys, what's happening? Justin's here. Justin here. Justin Leslie. Pfizer whistleblower, alternative media whistleblower, truth teller. I wanted to hop on here and talk about my 200 days on semen retention as I officially reached the 200 day mark, and I'm on the verge of reaching 201 days. See that 200. And the reason I'm keeping track, it's not even really about the number anymore. It's more or less just to like hold myself accountable. But I haven't documented this journey up until like my last video and the video before that I posted like 4 months ago. I started talking about semen retention, and like to me, there's so much I could get into on this journey. But I wanted to start actually off with a verse from First Peter 2:11, where it says, "Dear friends, I warn you as temporary residents and foreigners to keep away from worldly desires that wage war against your very souls. Be careful to live properly among your unbelieving neighbors. Then, even if they accuse you of doing wrong, they will see your honorable behavior and they will give honor to God when he judges the world." So that verse does speak volumes to me, and I think that at the end of the day, semen retention has many benefits um, that are absolutely spiritual, and they're also it's a lot of mental strength that you have to build up. Um, Based off of my own human experience, I have over the last, I'm 27, so for the first basically 26 years of my life, um, I was in a cycle of releasing and being depleted, and I'm on a journey essentially to not be depleted anymore and retain as best as I can. So I have some thoughts about why I am on this journey. Part of it has to do with call it self-improvement, but also just like when you first try semen retention, it's all about like moving through urges. Because basically when you're in a depleted state, you are of the flesh and you're essentially like committing to your worldly desires, and you have a hard time really getting anything done, um, for lack of a better word. um, you're essentially afraid to move forward. So there's like there's a huge connection to this in regards to pornography and to even like using social media essentially, where you like find women who are half naked on Instagram. But like modern society, like we're all addicted to dopamine hits essentially. Whatever dopamine is, I've shared my philosophy on hormones and everything. Like whatever dopamine is, it's used as a term to essentially have short-term pleasure, and then ultimately you end up in cycles of regret, and lust is a really powerful thing. So the reason I started on this journey is ultimately to tackle my problems head on. And a lot of that has to do with anxiety and depression and trauma and fear, and like wanting that mental strength of conquering this sin of lust. that took over my life that I wasn't even really conscious of until probably like maybe 2 years ago or so. Um, and it's a lot of this has to do with like literally rewiring your brain chemistry and doing it from scratch. Um, because like when you're retaining, you can look people in the eyes and like stare into their soul essentially with confidence. Whereas if you're, and when I say people, like men and women, I suppose it's a little different for each gender. With men, when you look into a man's eyes, like you can tell if he himself is releasing and if they're not, if they're not, they're willing to talk about it. If they are, then they're living in a life of shame and out of balance. Like this is something that humans aren't supposed to be doing is lusting over themselves and sinning against their bodies. And so the biggest benefit is probably that we all we all were fapping for a reason and neglected our minds. And now um, it's all about coherence at the end of the day. It's all about being coherent and holding that vital energy, that that semen that you have, that sexual energy that you have is connected to like the codes essentially of life that literally are able to help create another a human, a little baby. That's the power of semen. And this can also apply for women too, in the sense of like orgasming. Like it's it's a powerful thing to release that energy, and especially with men, like men will orgasm and then just fall asleep right after. And like that's not how we're meant to function. God didn't create us to bust and then fall asleep. Like our circadian rhythms are not meant to follow a cycle of busting and sleeping after. And so society is in a trap where we have fallen into this cycle of lust and it's accepted as a norm. But it's a logical fallacy to accept it just because it's seen as something that everybody does, that it means it's good for you. This is not something that's good for you. You're not going to get prostate cancer from doing semen retention. You'll just find yourself and be more coherent. You'll be more calm, cool, collected. You'll be more stoic and not quick to react to certain things or speak um speak ill will towards people. And um I feel like you'll have like less anger towards yourself ultimately. And the small things ultimately become beautiful, where you know you can gain gratitude for the little things like shoveling snow, or a meal with family, where I used to fall into traps of just like feeling I needed to release the energy so that I had like weight off my shoulders, which is crazy. A lot of this is about regulating your nervous system at the end of the day as well. And if you are constantly in a state where you have urges, that means that you're in a sympathetic state and you're like dying to get into parasympathetic. And to me, it's you're you need to move past the urges to prove that you can ultimately do it. You know, and hold that energy in your balls basically. Um, I'd say that along with the mental benefits of just being coherent, I've noticed that my strength in the gym has definitely increased a large amount. I feel like I'm like kind of on steroids, honestly, where I'm just stronger and I've like moved past the threshold of I've been like maintaining a weight between 180 and 190 pounds from the ages of like 23 to 26, and this year I've broken through a plateau of over 200 pounds, and I'm probably at like 15% or less body fat. So um, I think that's ultimately a product of semen retention and like being able to move through and just keep the strength and keep muscle versus like when you release your vital energy, like you're not going to be in a building state. You're going to be in a depleted state of, less testosterone, and therefore your body is going to be using other resources like muscles ultimately to get through um, the day to day and function. And yeah, I feel like just in general, like conversation with people as well, when you are retaining, you're just more confident. You're able to, talk to men and women with way more energy, and I will say that I ultimately being a chiropractic program graduate student, I'm a bit addicted to coffee and I like want to get off of this cycle of being on coffee so much. I just feel like I use it ultimately to like stay up sometimes. And it's a crutch that I've used from like weaning off of alcohol and weaning off of like using weed. And so, that's something that I'll continue to share on this journey. But, like I used to be like this party boy in college, and I just don't even have any desire to like go out anymore and get drunk. And that evolved into this and wanting to retain my seed ultimately for myself, but ultimately like I don't want to release, and basically I'm gonna be having a baby. I want to hold that energy up to create like the best baby possible. Um, so yeah, I'd say that to make it to 200 days, like you're gonna go through a lot. Um, for me, it took a long time on this journey really to just snap out of it in the sense of relapsing. I would go a few days, like 3 days was a lot for me, and then boom, like you're in a depleted state again once you relapse. But like it's at least progress. Like a majority of people nowadays, probably 80-90% of the population, if not more, of men are releasing and are depleted. So, um, I heard on another semen retention channel actually where it was created a metaphor ultimately where like if that many men are their baseline is essentially being depleted, like they don't even know what it feels like to retain past like 2 or 3 days. And so if you can move past a threshold of 3 days and get up to a week, then you'll actually start seeing some of the initial benefits of like having more energy and not feeling like you're foggy brained essentially, and that you're not essentially sinning over your body. Um, so that's one of the huge things that no fap and semen retention does is it puts a mirror in front of your face where like if you start on this journey and then you relapse, you can experience some positive effects and then boom, you face negative effects. So now the fact that I'm at like 200 days, the effects that I will have from consciously releasing scare me. You know, like I don't want to do that at all. Like I have no desire to release my seed at all. Like it's been a journey of abstinence and semen retention. I have no plans on falling into the trap again because of how far I've come and where my confidence has come. You know, I used to be so depleted. Like I would release like all the time. Like once a day, sometimes twice a day, just to like get through the day. So to get to a point and a threshold where I've reached the 200 level is insane to me. And so, you know, part of that also it has to do with like on this journey, like I was relapsing and releasing and being depleted like on my whistleblower journey. And that has to do, I think, from just trying to escape my reality as best as I can and like feel something positive versus like face the reality of feeling like I was lied to and feeling like the world is just against me and versus just facing it head on. Like it was like giving me a sense of like a good feeling where I just didn't have the strength at the time to face my reality the way it was presented to me, which, you know, I was definitely in a tough situation, I suppose. But you know, at the end of the day, admitting that it's like all on you and it's a huge thing. And so, um, yeah, again, the whole thing has to do with really finding who you are and meeting yourself where you're at as well. I'd say that like it's okay to ultimately relapse also on this journey. It's just, are you going to do better? Or are you going to like once you become conscious of the benefits of semen retention, like once you try it and observe what retaining does, which is like give you the energy and strength and like it's coherence in the sense of mind, body, and spirit. You know, your mind, you're mentally conquering yourself and destroying your worldly desires. Body, you're ultimately getting stronger. And I've seen that over the last 200 days where I've noticed that I'm stronger in the gym. I can lift more weight and you know, I surprise myself. Obviously not trying to hurt myself either. Like I do have like a shoulder injury that I've dealt with over the last few years and I'm not like a big powerlifting deadlifter or anything like that anymore. I'm throwing my back out over time from doing stuff like that. So at the end of the day, you have to, you know, use your sound mind ultimately to create and sculpt a physique that is what you want. And so, you know, I don't think I'm gonna be like I'm 5'11" or so. So at 200 pounds, like I don't need to be much more than probably 210, 220. But if I could get to 210, 220 lean within a few years, that would be awesome. But um, you know, it's gonna take time. So mind, body, and then spirit, in the sense of the spiritual realm, like this is a spiritual war where um call them demons, call them just negative entities, call them negative thoughts, frequencies, like however you want to describe it. Like at the end of the day, it's a spiritual war of good versus evil, and the devil wants you to release. The devil wants you depleted. The devil wants you splurging all over the floor, wants you, banging your girlfriend basically and just having sex that is meaningless and releasing to just go to bed where, I haven't ultimately experienced having sex on semen retention where um I wouldn't release. So I can't actually speak on it, but frankly, I think that there's something that can be said about having sex on semen retention and like not releasing where you're still like higher energy. Um, you're like higher energy than you would be if you're depleted, obviously, but you're still like losing some form of energy, I think, but you're also like gaining energy from your partner. And so, um, you know, I just don't think it's necessarily like what Jesus would do is like have sex on semen retention, unless you're married. And then if you're married and then you want to do that, I suppose that's fine. Um, but at the end of the day, like we really should be doing our best as men of God to retain our vital energy that He gave us and created within us to transcend, which transcend literally means trance ends. Like we're all in a trance thinking that semen retention or thinking that releasing every single day is something that's normal, or 80-90% of men think that releasing every single day is normal. And it is absolutely insane because if you go into your bathroom and go turn on porn and, watch whatever you're going to watch, go to the corn hub. If you receive a phone call, you are not going to answer that phone call. Why? Because if you answer it in the middle of what you're doing, the person on the other line is going to even like hear your frequency and like know subconsciously at least that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. So, um, I wish I shared more on this journey in the beginning, but I was going through a phase of my life, I suppose, that I needed to stay silent, and I, have gone through some of these waves of being outspoken and then going into hibernation per se. But you know, I believe that tough times don't last and tough people do. Where, um, I've heard people share similar experiences, and I just really encourage people to start their own journey and retain and get some balls that are full, basically, and bring it to, self ownership, where it's ultimately to me, for me, it's about a relationship between me and God and not sitting on my body. Because sitting on my body, like I have control over this for sure. And I just, I want to take control of my life and the situation that God has given me. And, releasing ultimately, I feel like also had to do with like me running from certain situations in the sense of like being active on social media and being more outspoken about what's going on with, big pharma and how they're trying to kill us, or how politics are completely fake, and how, you know, psychological operations are everywhere. At the end of the day, like I was releasing ultimately, I think, to get away from all that, and because I like hated myself and hated my life. So I can say now that I don't hate myself. I don't hate my life. I am worthy of the situation that I'm in, and I am responsible for the situation that I'm in. So, I'm gonna end this self-reflection there. I think if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them down below. Hit the subscribe button, leave a like, thumbs up if you made it to the end of the video. I appreciate y'all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.